Today we are covering designing Microsoft Azure infrastructure solutions. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. If you like this content, do like, share and subscribe to this channel. Question is, you manage an Active Directory domain named contoso.local. You install Azure AD Connect and connect to an Azure Active Directory Azure AD tenant named contoso.com without syncing any accounts. You need to ensure that only users who have a UPN suffix of contoso.com in the contoso.local domain sync to Azure AD. Solution: you use the Synchronization Service Manager to modify the Metaverse Designer tab. Does this meet the goal? Options are yes or no. Correct answer is no. Next question is, you have an app named App1 that uses data from two on-premises Microsoft SQL Server databases named DB1 and DB2. You plan to move DB1 and DB2 to Azure. You need to implement Azure services to host DB1 and DB2. The solution must support server-side transactions across DB1 and DB2. Solution: you deploy DB1 and DB2 as Azure SQL databases on the same Azure SQL database server. Does this meet the goal? Options are yes or no. Correct answer is no. Next question is, you have an Azure Cosmos DB account named Account1. Account1 includes a database named DB1 that contains a container named Container1. The partition key for Container1 is set to city. You plan to change the partition key for Container1. What should you do first? Option A. Delete Container1. Option B. Create a new Azure Cosmos DB account. Option C. Implement the Azure Cosmos db.net.sdk. Option D. Generate the keys for account 1. Correct answer is option B. Next question is, your network contains an Active Directory domain named contoso.com that is federated to an Azure Active Directory Azure AD tenant. The on-premises domain contains a VPN server named Server1 that runs Windows Server 2016. You have a single on-premises location that uses an address space of this. You need to implement two-factor authentication for users who establish VPN connections to Server 1. What should you include in the implementation? Option A. In Azure AD, create a conditional access policy and a trusted named location. Option B. Install the Configure Azure MFA server on premises. Option C. Configure an Active Directory Federation Services ADFS server on premises. Option D. In Azure AD, configure the authentication methods from the Multi-Factor Authentication MFA service settings. Create a trusted IP range. Correct answer is option B. Next question is, you have an Azure virtual machines that run a custom line business web application. You plan to use a third-party solution to parse events logs from the virtual machine stored in an Azure storage account. You need to recommend a so to save the event logs from the virtual. What should you include in recommendation? Option A. Azure VM Diagnostics Extension. Option B. Azure Monitor. Option C. Azure Log Analytics. Option D. Event Log Subscriptions. Correct answer is option A. Next question is, you have an Azure Storage V2 account named Storage1. You plan to archive data to storage 1. You need to ensure that the archived data cannot be deleted for 5 years. The solution must prevent administrators from deleting the data. What should you do? Option A. You create an Azure Blob storage container and you configure a legal hold access policy. Option B. You create a file share and snapshots. Option C. You create a file share and you configure an access policy. Option D. You create an Azure Blob storage container and you configure a time-based retention policy and lock the policy. Correct answer is option D.